Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Be working in anatomy lab. We refer jokingly to the anatomy specimen as the zombies. These are bodies the government or city morgue donates to the uni for classes and shit. Most of them are skinned to better expose the muscular system. The skinning is also done to prevent the students from identifying how those people died. Students often get a specimen that's missing half its head, or missing an arm or leg. They presume we removed those parts for exposition. However, that's how they came to us and that's how they died. Usually a car accident, work accident, gunshot, etc. We just trim off the bits of meat and bone and leave the body prepared for study. I never actually did this. Chief technician was responsible for preparing the bodies. It included, like I said above, skinning, trimming or masking the wounds so they'd be less gruesome and easier to study. Not only that, but he'd have to clean every internal organ and bathe the corpse in a formaldehyde, glycerol mix. Specimens are, like you'd assume, people that are not identified by police or relatives. John does. Usually hobos, homeless people or drifters. Chief technician was always sulking a bit and we always assumed it was because of the gruesome nature of his job. One day he requests my help in storing the specimens he had just finished preparing because the harness equipment was broken. Storing the bodies involved in placing them in a large tank that was welded into a metal gurney. They were placed inside 2 at a time. I'm used to seeing dead shit from working at the lab for so long, but I had to hold my breath when I stepped into the prep room, had never been there. Removed skin laying in a sink filled with formaldehyde. Bits of rock-solid congealed blood on gurneys. Hoses for pumping glycerol into organs. Nails and teeth placed on jars. Recompose myself for a bit. Grab a specimen by ankles while CT grabs it by the shoulders. We place it on the tank. Then another one. We stack both specimens inside the tank. CT turns on formaldehyde glycerol hose and pumps the tank full of the mix. CT places the lid on the tank, covering it a bit so that we don't get sprayed with the mix. Halfway through the barrel runs out and he requests me to wait a bit while he goes to the other room to switch it. One specimen is partially covered and the one on top is only soaked. Patiently wait a bit. Loud bangs come from the inside of the tank. Blood turns cold, starts sweating. Lid is covering the tank except for the small part the hose is sticking through. Another bang. Thinking it's the hose banging against the tank and the barrel is being switched and differential pressure does its thing. Move hand to pull the hose up a bit. Hose won't come, as if it's stuck to something. Bang. Still trying to pull hose. Realize it's not stuck to the specimens but something is pulling it back. Start to hear the sound of something moving in water. Hearing a faint whisper. Mother, suddenly the hose goes stiff and fluid starts to pour in again. Banging stops, whatever was pulling the hose lets go. CT comes back in, finishes the work and locks the lid on the tank. Can't say sit. As we were going out he noticed that I'm sweating.
They did that thing on you, didn't they?
Nod. He doesn't say anything as we walk back to the tech room. I recompose myself enough to ask him what happened and if he knew what had happened. He says,
"These people were never cared for, never buried. We don't know who they are and where they come from. I reckon they don't like being handled around like that."
I got more from my experiences working there if you guys are interested. Alright, here's another one. Be working late at night, just filling papers and stuff. Only people there were me, this new guy and this Asian chick from the biology department who hung around there. We're all sitting around going over some papers and checking shit we have already done so we can lock up and leave. I go double check to see if all the anatomy labs and auditorium is closed. Do my rounds checking door by door. I also go inside to see if anyone forgets anything inside. All clear, time to close the auditorium. Open the door to the auditorium, go in. Everything is empty, turn around to leave. Feel something, turn around again. Single metal gurney in the corner of the room. Blink, gurney is now covered with a sheet. Blink, there's a volume under the sheet. Blink. Things under sheet twitches. Turn around and close the door as fast as I can. Open it one more time to check. Gurney is gone. Went home that day and didn't sleep. Played video games with the doors locked and the lights on all night. One more. In Tech Central, just going looking at some books and drawing some Warhammer crap. Other techs are away helping teachers and whatnot. Decide to grab some coffee, grab a styrofoam cup and head towards the break room. Break room has a large window that allows us to see the hallway that leads towards the labs. Grab a coffee bottle, look up at the window. Door at the end of the hallway is half open. See bloody hand reach over and close it. Rush down towards the door, nothing inside. Go back to the break room. Look at window again, door slowly opens, stays half open for a long minute, then closes itself shut. Go back to the door. It's locked. Alright. Another one. Mopping floor because the med students were fucking around with a zombie hand. That's how we call the specimens, in the lab, and got glycerol all over the tables and floor. Turn around to soak the mop in a bucket. Bucket which I had placed right next to my feet is all the way to the other side of the lab. Pick it up, put it back, resume moping. Mind you, the specimen from the previous class was still in the room because I hadn't put it away yet. Mopping. Still mopping. Mopping some more. Turn around to soak mop so I can resume moping. Bucket tilted over, spilling slosh all over the floor without me even noticing it. Go grab shit to clean it up. Return to the lab. Bucket is broken to bits, plastic everywhere. Wet footprint near the wall. Tried not to think much of it. Cleaned it up and put the zombie away. Last, actually creepy, lab story. Me and chief technician are walking around the archives organizing and filing stuff, buncha filing cabinets, boxes, papers everywhere, poorly lit rooms, lights flicker all the time. There are files there dating from 1932. We pull shit out, put it in boxes, put it in a cabinet or shelf. Pull out this old cardboard box filled with old papers. Notice there's a small thing behind the box. Piece of leather and a human teeth, looked like a molar, almost black with rot. Realize it's human leather. Start to feel ill. Call CT over. Realize he left the room. Head towards the exit, still holding teeth and leather in hand like a reach. Light flickers. For a second I see with the corner of my eye a specimen standing there in the corner of the room staring right at me, twitching. Look at its direction. Nothing. Bolt out of the fucking room. Teeth and skin are gone. Can't find it afterwards. CT just tells me I'll get used to it.
Medical student, first day of anatomy lab. Open up both body bags. They are stored double wrapped. The smell is not super good. Definitely a dead person, slightly weird feeling. Have to flip him over, with a few other people. Dissection begins on back. Feel 100% dead weight and limp body. No rigor mortis due to age of body, 3 months old. And preservation. Proceed to carefully skin a dead man's entire upper back down to the fascia in an hour and a half. Get used to it. Could definitely eat lunch while dissecting. Finally open abdominal cavity. Partner is holding abdominal wall back with hemostats. Cadaver is quite obese. Forceps slip and abdominal wall slaps downward and sends cadaver fat all over my face and into my slightly open mouth. Spit into the sink for 5 minutes solid. Could still taste the disgusting mix of formaldehyde and cadaver fat in my mouth days later. I have spent over 100 hours cutting up dead people, which is creepy saying it like that. though it loses its excitement after spending 4 hours on a Saturday night finding nerves to the glute.
This is an actual true story, not embellished or exaggerated at all. I work in a university research lab. Lots of late hours. Computer processing data for a long time. Look around the building, go to the top floor. Mostly mechanical and ventilation for the building. Find an unlocked door to a creepy silent hill like a surgery room. See light coming from the other side. Light is from an empty medical-looking room that is empty except stainless steel cabinets with medical-looking stuff in it. See another room, go to it. Abandoned office of some grad student. Sit in her green Raleigh chair and go through her desk. Leave. Few weeks later I remember I want that Raleigh chair 'cause my lab is one chair short. Go back to get it and it's gone. Look around the top floor for it. See it through a window in another locked and empty abandoned room on the other side of the building, same floor though. Realistically I think some maintenance worker moved it, but when I went back to the dead grad student office nothing was removed except the chair. Also, Googled grad student and she died 4 years previous to leukemia. I guess since her office was off by itself people just forgot about it.
Be me, medical student, working late in an anatomy lab. Revising for upcoming exams, very tired but also determined. It's around 21:45. Medical school is attached to a big hospital. Anatomy lab shares the same space as the hospital mortuary. Anatomy technician is my bro, I have his access card for the doors. Getting restless, decide to have a walk around. Need a piss, can't be bothered to go upstairs to the hospital entrance. There's a toilet in the changing room. Walk through the scrub room past the screen that looks into the mortuary. Into the changing room, having a piss. Suddenly I can hear a muffled sobbing. Nope.jpg. I whip around and leave the bathroom, sobbing gets louder. Can hear water running. No one in the scrub room, the tables are clear and all the drawers are closed. Still can hear crying, cannot work out where it's coming from. There's a massive crashing sound and the crying stops. I keep running, grab all of my things and leave. Never studied in the anatomy lab after that.
That reminds me of my first, sort of, experience with a dead person. 2 weeks ago. Comparative anatomy lab. We're dissecting sheep's brains, identifying structures and nerves and shit. Professor comes in with a pair of big-ass glass jars on a cart. She pulls out 2 human brains. A few students come up to poke and prod, but not me. I lift one of those fuckers up and hold it in my hands. Spend the next few minutes in some kind of trance, just staring at that blob of preserved fat. This was once a man. Avi. Professor comes up and asks me if I'm alright. Snap out of it, go back to the lab bench. Leave early, contemplate existence.
Be me. In the class anatomy and physiology. Cadaver time. Whoa, that's a dead body on that table. The teacher summons us to get up real close. That still is a dead person. We're all gloved up, masked, and gowned. The teacher pulls out a scalpel. Alright, let's open him up. Starts making a large Y incision across the chest and abdomen. Starts pulling back skin and fat. Bleeds very minimally. Keeps cutting and opening, seeing muscle and connective tissue. Teach keeps going on about all the technical terms, pointing out various parts of interest. We watched this for hours. Some of the other students got Whoozy.
And? That's how medical training works. But bleeding? Did you work with fresh bodies? Ours were usually embalmed, since we worked at them for a whole term. In the end, only bones and sinews were left, and a big bucket of stuff that got cremated with the bones later on. Since I'm a dentistry student, I got on the class later. When the medical students already finished with the extremities, we only had to work on the head and neck ourselves. Our instructor had a pyramid of 8 severed heads prepared for us and handed them to us by pulling them by the ears. He regularly forgot to wear gloves since he was nearly 80 and a bit traditional. He once broke the nose of a body while he was showing us something in the abdomen because he casually put his elbow in the body's face. We had to start by peeling the skin off, which is much more difficult than it sounds. You have to cut it loose, but you mustn't damage anything below it. The funny thing was, it bothered me not one bit. It bothered none of the students, not even the girls who went in there green and shaking. Once you started working, everyone just thought that it wasn't that bad. Of course, some things were disgusting. Intestines weren't always well preserved by the embalming. And one time the instructor pressed on the lungs and a stream of liquid gushed out of the mouth and nose of the corpse. It hit some students in the face and the only thing he said was, "I can promise you that this wasn't water."
Back then my college was a hospital and the annex building was a morgue, but it got renovated. Be me. Be a student assistant. Be at the professor's office at around 7 p.m., college closes at 9 p.m., talking to students who have issues with their schedule. Finally alone. The teacher comes in, I know her. Told me that I should go home now. Told her I'm still finishing up and I'll go home. Said she'll wait for me because we had the same transpo, we're kinda close. She had a different desk, really far away from me. I was arranging papers when suddenly I heard someone called my name in a girl's voice. Thought it was my professor, yes ma'am. She poked her head out and asked me what's going on. I said it was nothing. Later on, we were about to lock the office. I heard it again, this time I clearly heard it was my professor's voice. What is it, ma'am?
Are you high or something?
She said. Went out of the school with a couple of students and professors. Told her what happened a while ago. Suddenly, her face looked serious.
Yeah, I know that. I've been hearing that since my first day here.
Not the exact words. She told me that she's been talking to the ghost when she's alone. Are you fucking kidding me? GIF. Next month resigned as a student assistant, never talked to the professor again. We've met a lot of times, but I've been avoiding her, no wonder she's sometimes alone.
Work in the OR. About a year or so into the job, we lose a patient on the table during a massive trauma. It was somewhat expected, but we usually try to ferry them off to the ICU before they die. I helped clean up and take the body down to the morgue. We have to wait for a security escort in an unused room. Me, 2 nurses, and the body crammed into this small space. We were waiting for about half an hour or so. During that time the lock to the room clicked open a few times, and the door rattled even more often. Each time I popped my head out to the hallway but there was nobody there. It was a long hallway with almost no places to hide. Finally start heading to the morgue. Get on the elevator. Press the button to the basement. The elevator goes up instead. Up to the 4th floor. They died in OR4. The elevator stops, the doors don't open, and we're stuck there for a few tense seconds before it moves down to the basement. Deliver the body with no other incident. There were a few more, but most recently, sitting in a storeroom late at night. There's a shitty spare stethoscope hanging on a wire rack. Doing some reading when there's a loud bang. Look up and the stethoscope was swinging into the wire rack on its own. Tried to recreate it with environmental factors. Couldn't make any noise except by actively swinging the stethoscope into the rack. I could only recreate the sound it made by flinging the stethoscope against the rack as hard as I could. Like I said, those were the best. Most of the time I just get a general creepy feeling late at night. There's a nurse that goes on ghost hunts that swears up and down she's seen a kid sitting on an OR table late at night. In one of our ORs the code blue alarm will go off randomly when there's nobody there. We've had it checked a dozen times and they can't find anything wrong. One time, hiding out in an MRI control room that only me and a few others have access to. There's a camera looking into the magnet room at all times. Get an odd feeling. Look at the camera. It looks foggy, not like static, actual fog rolling into the room. Look through the window into the room. Nothing. The automatic door swings open. Assume it's the cleaning crew. Walk around to the door. Nobody's there. Another kinda meh one. Late at night, about to leave, decide to explore a long way around to extend out the time clock and snag some sweet overtime. Wandering around half-lit corridors. Find a random wheelchair in a connecting hallway between the ORs and a small outpatient operating clinic that I never go to. Decide to fuck around with it for a little bit. Go into the clinic on my way. It's all locked up and dark. Look around a bit. Can't find a way through. Hear some rustling in one of the rooms. Nothing there. Leave the way I came out. The wheelchair is missing. There's another one but it might just be shitty mechanisms and not paranormal. Checking some stuff in a room after hours. There are hanging monitors that I put up because I'm usually taller than everyone else and I smack into them. Put them all up and go about my business. Stand up and turn to leave quickly. Smack my head into a monitor. Too angry to automatically assume it's paranormal.
I was officially dead, but I do not know for how long exactly. I sort of remember what I felt and saw. Ask me anything. Story. Was driving home one night. Drunk driver ran a red light out in a rural community area and T-boned my car. My car flipped multiple times down an embankment and finally stopped at the bottom. I was taken to the hospital and straight flatlined the entire time I was on the table. Gave me CPR and used defibrillators, but nothing worked. I was declared legally dead at 2:13 a.m., Sunday, June 1, 2014. The staff apparently turned off my heartbeat monitor and other devices after declaring me dead, and sent me down to the morgue. Sometime in between then, my heart started beating again and I came back to life. That next morning, I do not know what time I woke up down in the morgue. I was naked on a cold slab, and needless to say I was pretty scared and confused when I woke up. I am not sure who was more scared, me or the doctor in the morgue, when I randomly sat up and started screaming.
Be me 4 years ago. First day working as an EMT, just finished the cert course a week earlier. Stoked to drive an ambulance. Fuck yeah. JPG. First call on the job. It's to a duplex in the next town over. We go all around the county on calls. We arrive and I recognize the house as my ex's house. The duplex is split down the center, basically a hallway, and there's a door on either side, each leading to a small house. Ex lived on the left. Her dad was the one that made the 911 call. They had heard weird noises a few days before but thought nothing of it. The neighbor lived on the other side alone, and hadn't left his house in a few days. They reported a strange, horribly prominent smell. Local police have yet to arrive. The landlord was called and had just arrived the same time we did. My partner and I walk in the door to the main hallway, and as soon as we open the door you can smell it. My partner immediately vomits, and I'm supposed to be the rookie. After stepping back outside and talking with the ex's family and the landlord, we say fuck waiting for PD. The landlord decides she will give us the key to the tenant in question's side of the duplex, but refuses to go back in there. So her and the ex's family wait outside. Partner and I walk in. hold our breath as we unlock the door. Door open, and although I had never smelled such a fucking awful smell before, I knew what it had to have been. We announce ourselves and walk in. It's at this moment that local police show up. Nothing in the main room, gagging incessantly because of that fucking smell. Walk around the corner into the dinky little bedroom. There is Mr. Neighbor on the floor like he must have just sort of fallen out of bed. He is quite clearly dead and apparently had been for some time. The guy is extremely bloated, he has since soiled himself, maggots and shit. Protocol is protocol though, so we check vitals, dead as fuck. Sorry for the fucked up Greentext, I'm at work on my phone. Anyway, almost done. Guy is dead as fuck. The officer and myself both radio into our respective dispatchers to relay the situation. Officer Anon and my partner help me flip the guy onto his back so we can put him on the stretcher and GTFO, on 3. 1, 2, 3, flip. We flip him over and this guy is just leaking bodily fluids everywhere. Blood out the nose and ears and what, at the time, I could only assume was a mixture of piss and feces spills out onto my shoes. Oh fuck nope. JPG. Lift the dude onto the stretcher and we take him outside. We load him into the ambulance, and not a second too soon. I'm vomiting in the street moments after. The guy, in his mid-40s, had suffered an aneurysm, most likely while sleeping, and had to have woken up, struggling, at which point he collapsed and died on the floor. I'll never forget that smell, the smell of a rotting corpse. It was a hell of a fucked up way to start my, at the time, new job.
Not really creepy, but weird. Here's a little backstory. When I was in university, I was roommates with this guy that had Asperger's. He was a really nice guy but socially inept and very solitary. I'm an Aussie and he was a Chinese exchange student, always kept to himself and was very clean and particular. Which is great, because I'm more of a quiet introvert myself. He was 22 and just finishing up a bachelor's of anatomy and cell biology. Roommate goes to class and I have the day off. Notice he didn't lock the door to his room, never been in there before. No, it's a breach of privacy and totally not cool, but curiosity gets the best of me. No, he has 2 terrariums with hermit crabs and a lizard I've only seen when he cleans them. Walk in, all kinds of weird shit all over the room. Take a peek at the terrariums. There's a third. Small heated glass container holding something that looks like a big white barnacle with a single black eye and tiny appendages. Binders of notes on his desk. Quickly peek over them. Tons of pictures of other barnacle-looking creatures, some in tanks and some cut open. Last one in binder is Howard, picture of the one in the tank. Lists of ingredients and receipts from medical research supplies store inside, about 10 different ingredients was apparently put into it. What caught my interest was the dollar amounts. $600 or something for mesenchymal stem cells is the only one I remember. Apparently he put a concoction inside of a live unfertilized platypus egg along with his own sperm and grew this thing. Take a picture of it. It moves when the flash goes off. Don't mention it for weeks and soon my roommate has graduated and is moving on to a research job back in China. Mention Howard to him. He gets angry about me entering his room without permission, says he had types of coral he was growing for the terrariums, makes me delete the picture of he'll be keeping the last 2 months' rent. Apologize, never hear from him again. Anyway, it was on my mind for a while and I did some research and it became clear he was making a really sophisticated homunculus. I was able to find different pictures and even videos of ones on the internet but none as complex looking as the one I saw that day. Honestly, it was so big and sprawled out looking, I thought it was some kind of petri dish mold he had created. But I thought the eye was really odd. I summed up the movement to my eyes playing a trick on me or me dumping something. Wish I knew more about it. I wonder if he's still growing them and if Howard is still alive.
Medical student here who peeled back every layer of a cadaver over the course of a year and a half. I intentionally denied the humanity of my cadaver over the course of the class so I could get through it without a crisis. By the end of it, I lost all perception of my donor as a person and saw it just as pieces. I didn't feel any kind of presence, but I didn't open myself up to it.
Yeah, when I took anatomy and physiology in college, we had 2 cadavers, a male and a female, and we had to treat them with respect, of course, but it was always somewhat odd. The dude was big, and his heart was literally massive. I remember thinking, as I stuck my finger into his aorta, every pump of blood that occurred during his life passed through this very passage, and it just felt very surreal. I held his heart a few more times, but other than that, the bodies were completely stripped away. We identified numerous muscles, vessels, etc., but there was one thing. They kept the faces covered. I think it may be half not wanting to traumatize us, and half not wanting them to dry out and beef jerkify, but they just kept the faces largely wrapped up above the nose. The neck was still visible, of course. Overall, it felt like a chunk of flesh. Definitely not, like, haunted. But there is a real reverence for what you're looking at and a genuine gratefulness that this person allowed us to use them to learn.
Hey Anon, up here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on gratefulness. I honestly feel the same way. I took A&P for the first time in medical school in a cold and calculated anatomy lab with at least 20 cadavers in one room. It was a very surreal first exposure, and my first priority was to treat them with respect too. In the first few sessions, the cadavers' faces were kept covered too, but when we dissected the eyes and facial muscles, the covering had to be removed. By then, we had already removed the liver, heart, and lungs, so it was almost routine by then. I can echo the genuine gratefulness for my donor. We didn't get to learn their real names. One day I accidentally cut too much of the ear off while exploring the masseter, so I named my cadaver Vincent after Vincent van Gogh, who supposedly cut his ear off for a prostitute. I did so out of respect and friendliness, and I like to think that the donor who surrendered his body for my studies would have thought that funny. Thank you for sharing your experience. It makes me feel better about what I went through coming to terms with my donor's gift. My first day we skinned the abdomen. My prior experience had been with skinning deer when hunting with my father. I knew how to remove skin, but it felt very uncomfortable to do that to a human being. The sound that skin makes when separating from the muscle and fascia beneath will never leave me. If you have more dissection to do, know that it gets easier as you grow numb to the novelty of it. Don't know if it's a good thing, but it can help you get through it all. Give thanks to the spirit of the donor and cut yourself off from the humanity of it. Good luck and hang in there, Anon.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.